Some books are mirrors showing you exactly who you are. Other books are like windows, letting you see into lives you never would have imagined. Today, I'm going to walk you through the books that have done both of those for me, and I'm going to do that with a tag from Pat at Book Chat with Pat. She's created this tag, the new Windows and Mirrors reading tag. It's very, very interesting. I'll link to her original tag video down below. You can go check it out. And also definitely check out her channel if you're not a fan of her already. You really should be. She's a really interesting, really sweet woman. And she's got some pretty insightful things to say about books and about reading. So let's get into it. It's a short tag. It's only 4 questions, but they're really, really interesting and really good. The first one is, talk about a few books that have served as mirrors to you, allowing you to see some aspect of your life experience reflected in a meaningful way. So for this one, I chose 3 books at kind of 3 different stages of my life. First book is City of Night by John Rechy. I read this when I was about 17 or 18 years old. I was just out of high school. And I distinctly remember buying it in a used bookstore, and I bought it because it had been referenced in some book reviews or some essays about On the Road, and it was kind of considered a book to be like adjacent to Jack Kerouac's On the Road. And it was a very eye-opening book to me, and I really saw a lot of myself in the book in some surprising ways, and I reread it a few different times. It's the story of a nameless young man who is a hustler, which is a strange word because it's basically a male prostitute. I don't know why they're not called hookers, but anyways, he's a hustler. And it's set in the late 1950s, and he's hitchhiking his way across America, turning tricks with largely closeted men. And he visits a lot of like great American cities, but he sees them through the underbelly of the city or through kind of the fringes, not through the mainstream, always kind of in the underground culture. So he goes to New York, I think he goes to Chicago, San Francisco, New Orleans, all these great cities I had never been to, but wanted to go to, and I was kind of fascinated with it. And it's really about being on the margins of society, being an outsider. There's a lot of alienation in it. There's a lot of loneliness in it. But there was also some real beauty in the book, especially in the travel passages where he's kind of traveling from city to city, or when he's coming into a city, and he's always seeing it at night, or at dusk when the sun's going down. And at the time, I was a musician, and we were kind of starting to tour a bit. And I was living kind of a similar life, and I just really identified with it a lot. And it was a really powerful book, and it really blew me away as a book that was actually superior to On the Road. And I felt that it achieved a lot of the things that Kerouac had tried to achieve, but were much better. But the mirror aspect of it is that I really identified with a lot of the things the character was struggling with and kind of going through, especially with alienation and loneliness and kind of a feeling of displacement or dislocation, even though you're in your own society and your own country. So it's a very interesting book. You should definitely check it out. The second book, a bit of a detour, and a pretty mainstream book, but it was really a mirror for me at the time, was A Cook's Tour by Anthony Bourdain. I caught on to this book a little bit late. It had been out for quite a while when I read it. I read it when I was 30. I had just gone back to college. Like a lot of things in life, I was late to the party. I went to college when I was 30. I had traveled a bit already, and I definitely wanted to travel more, and I got completely hooked on this book and kind of the Anthony Bourdain outlook on life. I definitely romanticized it at the time that I read it, but it's a really good book. Bourdain is a great person. Sad that he passed away, but this book was really influential to me. I had been to a lot of the countries that he writes about in the book. I'd already been to some of them. I wanted to go to the other countries that he had written about in the book as well. And I loved the way that he experienced those countries, because he experienced them through food and through local culture, so to speak. Not just sightseeing, not just being a tourist, but really doing his best to kind of insert himself into food culture, when food is definitely one of the pillars of any sort of human culture. And I really identified with that because I had similar experiences, but I mean, Bourdain had, amazing experiences in life, but I had similar experiences traveling, particularly in Southeast Asia. I was lucky enough to travel with people from Vietnam and with people from Thailand so that I could, experience home life and, cooking and the kind of food and the culinary aspect of the culture. And I just really identified with that. And I really loved that he had kind of built this whole kind of identity and lifestyle around traveling around the world, eating, meeting people, talking about life, and just, to me, living life the way it should be lived. And it really, I wanted to figure out, like, okay, how can I kind of have a similar experience in my life? And so it really was one of the factors that kind of pushed me to explore teaching abroad. And I just wanted to find out what that was going to be like. And I've been doing it ever since 2007. So very influential book. And I definitely saw myself in that book. And the third book is a book I've just read recently. It's From Blue to Black by Joel Lane. And this book really fascinated me in two ways. One is a nostalgia way, because it's set in Birmingham, UK, which I'm obviously not from, but it's set in the early 90s, and it follows a post-punk band, which is kind of on the cusp of breaking. They're a very talented band, but they're plagued by a lot of problems. And I had a very similar experience. I was a musician, and we felt like we were on the cusp of breaking. We definitely had some of the kind of trappings of success that went with us. And of course, we obviously just blew it. But I really identified with a lot of things in this book, and a lot of the kind of sort of the commentary and outlook on the music industry at that time. Even though it's set in the UK, still very similar to the music industry in the US. And it's also a fascinating book too. I also identified with the other aspect of it, in that the main story is about a romance and a relationship between the bass player and the lead singer, lead guitar player, and songwriter of the band. And the bassist basically watches him kind of just self-destruct and go into a very dark and very tragic downward spiral. And I've had people in my life do that, and I've had to kind of see that happen. And I thought that it was written really, really well. And I really saw a lot of myself in that, experiencing other people in your life just kind of spiral downward. And I think we've all had experiences in life, very dark times in life, to varying degrees. I've certainly had some very self-destructive times in my life where I've definitely pushed myself to a certain kind of edge, and had moments where I had to make a choice of, like, which way am I going, So it was very interesting to read that. I really saw a lot of myself in that. So second question, second prompt. Talk about a couple of booktubers whose reading is most like your own. This was really tough, and I really spent some time sitting down and thinking about this, and I really had a hard time. The first one is Matt from Books from the Back Porch. We both met through the Life on Books Discord and their community, and we have very similar tastes, but also some divergent tastes. But we both really have a taste for noir, a taste for crime fiction, and a taste for hard-boiled fiction. And I don't really know anyone else, even though I always read these books and talk about these kind of books. I've never really interacted with someone else personally who has similar tastes and also a similar outlook on life. And we've kind of become good friends. So I'm really happy to have met him. We have very similar tastes. If you're not watching his channel and you like my crime books series that I talk about, you should definitely check out his channel. I will link to it down below. He's got a great channel. He makes really good videos, and he's really interesting, really cool guy. The other one is, I guess, kind of obvious. It's a big channel. It's Cliff from Books Are Better Than Food. I was watching his channel for a long time because I had read a lot of the books that he reviews, a lot of books he reviews that I haven't read, but we both kind of have a taste for the darker side of literary fiction, or the darker spectrum of literary fiction. So kind of those books that are maybe genre fiction, but written a little too well to be genre fiction, but definitely a little too dark and disturbing to be mainstream. And there's a particular video of his that I originally found that really struck me, and that was his review of Day of the Locust by Nathaniel West, which is just a fantastic book. And it's usually coupled with another book called Miss Lonely Hearts, which I think he's also got a review of that. Fantastic stuff. I don't mean to say that I don't identify with other booktube friends and things like that. I will get to some of the channels later in this, but I have pretty unique reading tastes. I talk about a lot of books that I never hear anyone else talking about. It's done on purpose, but it's not done on purpose. I just have a knack for reading books, finding things that other people just don't read, just don't talk about. I go down a lot of rabbit holes when I'm searching for new things to read. I've always been like that. I've always been like that with music. I always listen to bands that other people don't listen to. I always watch movies that other people don't listen to. I always go to countries and places that other people don't go to. So it's just the way I am. So anyways, third prompt here, third question. Talk about a few books that served as window frames to you, allowing you to see the reality of others outside of your experience. This is a huge question, and I think that's because this is really one of the real treasures, or just the great thing, the real reward about reading, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, is that you get to live someone else's life. And you should be doing that with your reading. I strongly, firmly believe you should be reading about lives and life and experiences and places that you can't have, whether it's past, present, future, whether it's other countries, other cultures. You should just be exploring the world through books. I think that's one of the great things about writing, and it's one of the great things about the world we live in now, even though it seems like a heaving dumpster fire most of the time, because we can access so many books and so many publications from all over the world and from all different times. You're crazy not to be doing this. You're absolutely crazy not to be doing this. So Pat, this is probably the best question in this tag. So if you're watching and you're still listening, this is the thing you got to do. I could go on for hours about books that I've read that have given me a window into someone else's life, but I'm just going to keep it to 4. Okay. First one is a book I read just recently. I'm still kind of thinking about it. I'm still not sure how to talk about it a lot. It's Human Acts by Hong Kong. And this book really blew my mind. I'm not going to give a huge review of it. The window aspect of this book for me was that it's set during an event in history that I knew almost nothing about. And that's the Gwangju, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Gwangju uprising in South Korea. So something we know very little about as Americans, and most people around the world really don't know much about it. There was a time when South Korea was under a very harsh dictatorship, and people started protesting against it and rose up against it. And those protests were very violently suppressed, and thousands of people were killed in the streets, gunned down by the army. Very shocking thing to learn about. I love this book. It's a very challenging book. It's not a book that's like heartwarmingly loving, but it's really so well written because, and this is the second book I've written by Hong Kong that has done this. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Because it doesn't really detail from start to finish what happened. Instead, she takes different people from different walks of life in South Korea who were all impacted in different ways by this one event. And I find that to just be a great literary device, a great storytelling device, and she's just fantastic at it. I've read another book of hers called The Vegetarian, which has a similar kind of narrative, but a little bit different. But I can see that she kind of uses these kinds of devices, but she uses them in a great way. It's not a gimmick at all. It's such a fascinating book. You see the point of view of protesters, you see the point of view of family members, of friends, you see the point of view of people seemingly far removed from it, working like in the publishing industry, who are somehow impacted and affected by this event. Fantastic book, really great. This was a window into a time and a country and a society that I have to admit I just really don't know much about. It's a very fascinating book. Second one, similarly fascinating for similar things, something I knew nothing about. It's a book called Delicious Hunger by Hai Fan. These are short stories from Malaysia set during the Malaysian communist insurgency. Knew nothing about this, and it's a political outlook that I definitely subscribe to. Very touching stories, kind of slice of life stories from a group of guerrilla insurgents in a patch of jungle in Malaysia, kind of near the Thai border, actually. And really fascinating. It's not like guerrilla warfare stories. It's more of just kind of like their lives, what they went through, their past lives, who they were before they got involved with the movement. Really, really interesting, really fascinating novel, written in a really touching way. They're really touching portraits of people who dedicated themselves to that cause. So, great book. Next one, another war book, The Sorrow of War by Bourdain. I've done a video about this before. If you read much of the literature of the Vietnam War or of the American War in Vietnam, you might be familiar with this. But Bourdain was a North Vietnamese soldier who fought against the Americans, and he fought in southern Vietnam against the Americans. And he fought to kind of liberate Ho Chi Minh City. And that's a very touching passage in the book. This book gives you a window into the lives not only of North Vietnamese soldiers, but of North Vietnamese people. And it's not really a war book. You know, don't expect a Vietnamese version of Apocalypse Now or of, you know, any kind of war movie. Sorry, I can't think of them off the top of my head. It's more, again, about after the war, a little bit during, and then there's quite a large section also before the war in Hanoi, which I found to be really fascinating. I had lived in Vietnam for like 8 years, and it's still something I don't know much about, of like pre-war Vietnam, and especially pre-war North Vietnam. So I found that to be really, really interesting. You learn a lot about the sacrifices that families made, not only by sending off sons and daughters and fathers and mothers to war, but also just kind of like the daily life sacrifices that people made while their country was at war, not only with each other, because it was a civil war, but also then with American involvement, which compounded so many brutalities and just harsh living conditions. So really fascinating book, highly recommended, obviously, because I'm talking about it. And the last one, book number 4, a book of short stories. I've talked about this on my channel before, Going to Meet the Man by James Baldwin. This is a really fascinating window into the lives of African Americans in New York, in post-World War II New York. And really fascinating, really touching portraits. This contains one of my favorite short stories of all time, Sonny's Blues. We get stories of just normal families dealing with a lot of the systemic racism, and dealing with a lot of the social structures that hold them back and that make their lives more difficult. But there's also a lot of beauty in the book, and there's a lot of really fascinating cultural aspects in the book as well. So I think, especially now in America, this book is very important. And I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. Last question, number 4. Talk about a couple of BookTube channels that have expanded your horizons, helped you to explore books or genres outside of your comfort zone, or challenged you in some way. So I'm going to talk about 3 different channels, and I have to apologize to keep it to 3. I don't want this video to go on for so long. I do watch a lot of BookTube, and I have learned about so many great books from BookTubers. You can see I've got one shelf here. I've got another shelf that you can't see, full of books that I bought as suggestions from BookTubers. I actually need to stop and just read books for a while. But getting back to the tag, first one, Life on Books, Tony and Andy. They have a great BookTube channel, and they really kind of opened my eyes to that you could have a more discussion-based kind of BookTube channel, and that you could talk about books that other people don't really talk about. And I found that really refreshing, and I'm glad I found their channel at a time when I was kind of bored and kind of giving up on BookTube, because it just felt like a lot of people were just talking about the same books, or at least the same genres of books. And these guys really read really widely, but also very focused on very certain types of books. Really good stuff. And I also love too that they're able to draw connections to topics kind of adjacent to reading and what they're reading and bookish topics. So definitely cool, definitely very eye-opening channel for me. Also, last plug for these guys, they kind of opened my eyes to that you could have a bookish community online through their Discord server. I kind of took a chance and joined their server. It is a paid server, and I'm really happy I did. It's been a great experience. The second one is Bourdain from Reading from the Depths. I really enjoy Bourdain's channel. I don't really read a lot of the books that he reads, but I really like what he does. And again, I don't really do what he does, but I really enjoy it, and I find it really refreshing. What he does is he basically, I think he does probably 90 to 95% book reviews, and he'll review books that no one else will read. He does review a lot of well-known books, but I got to know him through his reviews of like advanced reader copies of books that I'm guessing were probably primarily self-published books, but he reads them and he reviews them, and he'll pretty much review, I think he reviews almost every book that he reads, which is really fascinating. I'm also really fascinated just by the sheer volume of reading that he can do. And I find his channel to be just really cool, really refreshing, really inspiring. And he and I have become friends. We kind of chat offline sometimes. We've done some buddy reads and stuff like that. But the big thing I took away from his channel was that it's okay to read and discuss genre fiction. I do read a lot of genre fiction, primarily like crime and noir, whereas he reads a lot of like sci-fi and horror. And so I kind of took inspiration from that and really tried to stay focused and go deep with the genre that I like to read. So the last one is Criminale. Huge channel. I'm sure everyone if you're watching this video, I'm sure you've watched a Criminale video. He's got a massive channel. Really inspiring because he's just really nice, and he has just such a genuine love for reading and a genuine love for books, which is just really, really inspiring to me. And the other thing that I really like about his channel is that he's willing to push the boundaries of his reading. He doesn't just stay in his lane. It's really easy on Booktube to just kind of stay in your lane and to just stay in a very popular lane. Like horror is a very popular lane. And so it's easy to just read horror and just talk about horror books. That's okay if you love it. Nothing wrong with it. But what I like about him is he will push himself. Like, for example, he has a disturbing books project, and he'll read some books that are genuinely disturbing, not just because of a horrific aspect, but more like disturbing, maybe because of the social content and things like that. And I learned about one of my favorite books that I've read recently from him, which was Notice by Heather Lewis. And he was also key, or maybe the key player in getting that book back into print. So we all owe him a big thank you for that, because it is an amazing book. It is disturbing, but it is amazing. And it just goes to show, you know, you can do some really cool stuff with having a BookTube channel. It doesn't just have to be all about, you know, yourself or your ego stroking or things like that. Okay, so there are lots of other BookTube channels that I watch, and I'm sorry if I didn't mention your channel here. Please don't be upset. I don't want this video to just go on forever. I watch tons of BookTube, and I think, you know, if I've commented on your channel, you probably know that. So finally, the last prompt here is to tag others. I'm going to be completely antisocial and completely against the BookTube community, and I'm not going to tag anyone because it's open to everyone. If you want to do this tag, go for it. If you're a person who normally doesn't do tags, you might really want to consider it, because it's a pretty interesting tag and it's a pretty interesting concept. Or you could maybe even pull something out of this to make a video, which I might actually do a whole nother video about windows into other lives. So I want to say thank you to Pat for tagging me and for tagging so many great people. I really appreciate it, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. In case you don't know, my name is Carl, and this has been Please Read Your Book.